Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about a thing that, or a subject that's very dear to my heart, and that's the church history. In my BD degree, I did my thesis on the church history of the chaplain service. So from the very start, I wasn't much into theology, but more into history. Now, the church history of the Dutch Reformed Church in the Rustenberg context, I want to start by taking you to the church building of the NG Church. Opposite the town hall of Rustenberg, one will find the imposing church building of the oldest NG Church in Rustenberg. On the cornerstone, one will find the date of 23 April 1898. The date of laying of the cornerstone by Commandant General P.J. Joubert, also identified as Vice President of the ZAR. Prominently at the main entrance, one will also find the emblem of the National Monuments Council, accompanied by a granite plaque explaining the history of the building in short. Now, this plaque states the parish established in 1850 lost all its possessions in 1895 due to the church establishing in 1892 and the subsequent court order. In consequence, Karl Heinz started building the Gothic Revival style church building on land donated by the ZAR government. During the Anglo-Boer War 1899 to 1902, the recently completed building was used by the British as a military hospital, and it was only consecrated in September 1903. The impressive interior was changed over time, but in 1969, it was decided to have major restoration work done. The restored building was consecrated in August 1975. Now, what is this all about? Now, let me first declare my own interest in the whole thing. This building is owned by the Nederduits Gereformeerde Kerk, the well-known NG Church. I am a pastor at the Nederduits Hervormde Kerk. The church that was, according to the plaque, established in 1892, the church that one can assume stands accused by the National Monuments Council plaque of taking possession of the previous church building of this parish by court order nogal. With the Gereformeerde Kerk, that's the third church, more commonly known as the Dopper Church, these three churches, the NG Church, the Hervormde Church, and the Dopper Church, became known as the three Dutch sister churches. Now, this sisterly relationship wasn't always that. Kerkstichting, the establishment of yet another church denomination, seems to be a favorite pastime of my people. Those identifying themselves as Boer descendants or Afrikaners. One often hears the not-so-funny joke, if two Afrikaners would end up alone on an island, it wouldn't be long before they established 4 political parties and 5 churches. It is said that a well-known motto, so dear to the Afrikaners, ex unitate virus, eendrag te maak mag, was chosen to constantly counter the tendency of division and to remind the people, you will only be strong if you are united. But let's look more closely to the history prominent set in stone on the wall of the oldest still standing church of the Dutch Reformed Church in Rustenberg. It is stated that the parish was established in 1850. The first Dutch Reformed parishes for the area were established at Potchefstroom in 1842 and Rustenberg and Leidenburg in 1850. 1850. All of this was part of the Great Trek event that started in 1835 and ended in 1853. The voortrekkers were unable to secure support of any of the regular dominees in the Cape when they left the country or the colony. The Dutch Reformed Synod in the Cape was subject to the British government, which also funded their activities. All the dominees' ministry under the Synod were thus regarded by the Transvaal people as paid by the English. Those that was most anti-British, like Potgieter, that started the Transvaal, one can say, feared the British government will use the church to influence the migrant population. So they didn't want to have much to do with the Cape Synod. By the end or the mid-1840s, the people migrating to Transvaal were starting to diversify. Quite a few of them were not so anti-British. That's an interesting thing that one must always remember. Because of the severe need to have ordained dominees among them so that they could baptize their children and confirm the children that grew up and be part of the Nagmaal, it was very important for them to get a dominee. Because in our church, if you don't have a dominee, you don't have baptism, you don't have Nagmaal, you don't have confirmation. The elders can't do that. It's not allowed. Of these, Reverend Murray had most influence on the Transvaal parishes at the beginning. He started his ministry at Bloemfontein at the end of 1849. He was the younger, let me just get a bit on. He was the younger son of the well-known Andrew Murray. Okay. So he started in Bloemfontein in 1849, and when he started, almost a week or so after that, he went to the Transvaal to look what's going on there. And there he met the Jerusalem gangers in the Mariko area. These were people who were a sect of the Dutch Reformed Church that wanted to track all the way up to Palestine. Because they've said, well, we're Israelites. And there's still people that under the Boer community that think of themselves as Israelites. They are a church. So they didn't stop. But they wanted to stone poor Reverend Murray when he tried to help them. These Boers were adamant to travel all the way up to Jerusalem. And most of them stayed in Nylstroom because they thought it was the beginning of the Nile River. And that's why our Nylstroom got its name. Okay. What also happened is that Reverend Murray became very concerned about the people in the Transvaal. So he said, no, we must really get the parish going there. And on the 21st of January 1850, the church board of Potchefstroom approved that a parish can be established in the Magaliesburg. And this new church board asked the Volksraad to have a town in this area. And that was the way Rustenberg started, as a church town. So the church board initiated the beginning of the town. Okay. Reverend Murray had to minister to all the Dutch Reformed members north of the Orange River. So he was quite a busy man. By 1852, two important things did happen in the Transvaal that influenced the Dutch Reformed history tremendously. First was the Sandrivier Convention that was signed on 17 January 1852, establishing the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic, the independent territory we know as the Transvaal. You must always remember that the English wasn't so keen on the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic, because that was the main thing. Will South Africa be a British-dominated place or a Boer-dominated place? And now these Boers call themselves the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek. So that was a bit of a problem. Okay. In the Netherlands, Professor Louts, a friend of the independent-minded Southern African Boers, succeeded in finding a Dutch dominee that was willing to go to the Transvaal, and that was Reverend Dirk van der Hof. So he was dispatched, and also what happened at this stage is the NG Church dominees that did minister to the people once in a while said, no, you won't ever get a dominee if you're not part of the Cape Synod. So at this stage, the Transvaalers said, well, then we don't have a choice. We'll have to become part of the Cape Synod. And they were in the negotiation process of joining the Cape Synod to get a dominee. Not aware of this general church meeting in Transvaal, the Transvaalers didn't know Dirk van der Hof is on his way when they were negotiating. And Reverend Dirk van der Hof arrived on 5 November 1852 in the Cape. He himself and the Cape Synod was under the impression that he would minister in Transvaal under supervision of the Cape Synod. He preferred it this way. He said it, he wrote it like that. And then what happened, he was dispatched to the Transvaal, and he arrived at Potchefstroom on the 27th of May 1853. Shortly after, on 8 August 1853, a very important general church meeting. That's the way the people in the Transvaal called their synod. The general church meeting was held at Rustenberg. This meeting was held to make 4 decisions, very important decisions. How and who will confirm Reverend van der Hof as dominee in the Transvaal? That was the first question. The second question, will the Transvaal Church still be part of the Cape Synod? Will they still go under the Cape Synod or not? Because they haven't finally done it. The third question was, will any other church fellowships be allowed in the Transvaal? And the fourth question was, will the Dutch Reformed Church in Transvaal continue with the singing of hymns in worship? That was a very, very important question. Now, the first 3 issues were decided without any debate. Reverend van der Hof tried his best to keep the connection with the Cape Synod and let Reverend Murray be the one to confirm him, but the independent-minded Transvaalers would not hear of it. They did not need the Cape Synod anymore because they had the dominee now. They were only willing to be associated with the Synod to have a dominee. So now that lapsed. The third, and they also decided that a member of the Volksraad will confirm me. That's a church. Okay. The third decision also went against Reverend van der Hof's advice. It was decided not to allow any other church fellowships to establish churches amongst the Boers, not the black population, but especially amongst the Boers. Religious freedom was deemed a threat to political unity. And the fourth matter was a very difficult one, that actually put the third question totally into harwar, we call in Afrikaans. Especially in Rustenberg, quite a few members were ardently against the singing of hymns in the church. Hymns were only introduced in the 1810s at the Cape and had been a point of dispute ever since. The root of this disagreement can be traced to this synod in 1618 to 1619, the Synod of Dort in the Netherlands. Although the synod was intended to give conclusion on the theological matters of the Calvinist Church, this synod also established a church order known as the Church Order of Dort. Of much importance for the church history concerning Rustenberg, the church order stipulated in Article 69, in the churches only the 150 Psalms of David, the 10 Commandments, the Lord's Prayer, and 10 Articles of Faith, the Song of Mary, Zacharias, and Simeon shall be sung. That was the rule. Also of importance is to note that the printed version of the Church Order of Dort came under the heading Kerkenordening gesteld in die nasionale synode der gereformeerde kerken. That was what Dort said the church's name would be, the gereformeerde kerk. In the English language, the Dutch Calvinist church is known as the Reformed Church. In both the Dutch and Afrikaans languages, two words can however be used to translate reformed, gereformeerd or hervormd. Both words have the same meaning. Gereformeerd is said to be closely linked to the French word réformer. I hope my French is not too bad. They say it's pronounced this way. And hervormd is the more Dutch name. In the Transvaal, both names were used without any issue. And they used it this way. That was, everybody knew what a hervormde kerk or a gereformeerde kerk is. There's no problem. And this wasn't the issue at this stage. On 5 January 1857, however, a new constitution was adopted for the ZAR. This constitution stated in Article 20 that the Nederduits Hervormde Kerk will be the church of the state in the ZAR. With this name of the church in Transvaal, there was an official establishment of the church's name in Transvaal as Hervormd. But they still used both names, even in official documents. They still refer to the church as gereformeerd. For the rest of the 1850s, the issue of the singing of the hymns was the big debate in Transvaal. Some members were very much against the singing of the hymns, as they believed that the hymns were bringing liberal or modern theology into the church. Other members loved singing the hymns and would not give them up. The dispute was in no ways limited to South Africa either. In the Netherlands, this had led to a schism in the Hervormde Kerk der Nederlanden in 1834. The new church that was formed was the afgeskeiden gereformeerde kerk in Nederland. For these gereformeerdes, the name Hervormd was tainted with liberal or modern theology. Gereformeerd became the rally name for those that chose to stay strictly Dort Orthodox. In Rustenberg, the dispute was to come to a head in 1859. For the mid-1850s, some of the well-connected anti-hymn members of the Dutch Reformed Church in Rustenberg were corresponding with like-minded members of the afgeskeide gereformeerde kerk in the Netherlands. The gereformeerdes in the Netherlands decided they had to help their brethren in the Transvaal. And they dispatched Reverend Dirk Postma to Rustenburg. Reverend Postma arrived in the Rustenburg area on 9 November 1858 and was received with open arms by all. At least we had a dominee. What kind of dominee is that? They didn't understand at this stage. Up to this stage, since the Transvaaltjes did not join the Cape Synod when Van der Hof came, Reverend Van der Hof remained the only dominee in the Western and Central Transvaal. He had to minister to the whole Transvaal, more or less. So you didn't see him very much. The happiness because of the coming of Reverend Postma, however, was not to last long for all. Reverend Postma was not prepared to accept anything less but the total abolition of singing of hymns in the church if he was to join the Transvaal Hervormde Kerk. The General Church Meeting of the Transvaal Church was not prepared to do so, and Reverend Postma and his supporters decided to establish the Vrye Gereformeerde Kerk, also known as the Doper Church, at Rustenburg. They asked to use the church building in Rustenburg, but the remaining members of the Hervormde Kerk did not take kindly to them seceding and refused this request. As a result, when the big day arrived on 10 February 1859, the Doper Church was established under a big syringa tree. A monument still marks the spot near the center of Rustenburg, and the Doppers didn't take kindly to not being able to use the church. It's still put on the monument. The Doppers diligently started building their own church in Rustenberg, and the church was very successful. They never looked back, and till this day they're still going strongly. At the end of the 1850s, a renewed effort was made to bring the Transvaal Church under the direction of the Cape Synod. The separation of the Dopper Church at Rustenburg was a great concern for the Volksraad, for the unity. And they decided to ask for advice in this matter from the Cape Synod. Reverends Hofmeyer and Louw was sent to render advice. A general church meeting was called together on 26 and 30 April 1859, and even Paul Kruger was part of it. At Potchefstroom, during this meeting, Reverend Hofmeyer convinced them that the only way to reunite the church in Transvaal is to bring it back under control of the Cape Synod. The Hervormde Kerk representatives were quite willing to do that, but when the Volksraad was asked to give their permission, they refused, still fearing the British influence in the Cape Synod. It must also be considered that the Dopper Church would never have agreed to this, because hymns were also sung in the NG Church. The problem remained for the Hervormde Kerk: no Cape Synod, no extra dominees. For the second time, when all hope was lost and they were saying, now we have to go under the Cape Synod, help arrived from Holland. The Amsterdam Commission in the Netherlands raised funds and was able to send 3 dominees out to the Transvaal. Reverend A.J. Begeman and G.W. Smits arrived in early 1860 and was confirmed in the parishes at Pretoria. Begeman came first, so he had a pick, and he picked Pretoria. And Smits, which arrived second, was sent to Rustenburg. The third of these reverends, P.A.C. van Heiningen, ended up in Leidenburg, which is a total different story. I don't have time to tell that to you. The Cape Synod was very disappointed that its wayward members in the Transvaal did not return to the fold. It was at this stage that the description sisterlike betrekkinge, sisterly relations, was used for the first time by the Hervormde Kerk to describe their relationship with the NG Church. For the Hervormde Kerk, the Old Dutch Church was their mother church, not the Cape Synod. They saw themselves on equal footing with the church in the Cape. The NG Church did not see it this way and blamed the old pioneer Dominee Reverend van der Hof for not doing enough to bring the Hervormde Kerk back under the Cape Synod. They considered the Hervormde Kerk as a church that sinfully separated from the Cape Synod, taking with them parishes that should belong to the NG Church. Because of this interpretation, the establishment date of both Hervormde and NG Church parishes in Rustenburg is given as 1850. And that is all over the place. They said, no, this is our history. No, it's our history. No, it's our history. So they can't agree on that. About 1866, the Cape Synod finally lost patience with the Hervormde Kerk and supported the establishment of separate NG Church parishes in the Transvaal. Immigration from the Cape in the interior was always ongoing, and several members of the NG Church ended up in the Transvaal and did not want to join a church not deemed to be their church. Reverend F. Leon Cachet from the Utrecht parish of the NG Church also took it upon himself to travel to the Transvaal and establish the NG Church parishes wherever possible. His message was that the Hervormde Kerk and its dominees in the Transvaal were theological liberal, like the Hervormde Kerk in the Netherlands, actually modern, because modern theology started getting a foothold in the Netherlands. In Rustenburg, a few of the members rallied to Reverend Cachet's cause. They were so few that they had to become members of the NG Church at Potchefstroom. But Reverend Cachet, when he was going to the Mariku, he had an altercation with Commandant Jan Viljoen. He said, no, you're not coming in here to split the church. So he was sjambakt by the commandant. So starting at extra churches in the Mariku. Okay. In the Cape, something happened that ended the whole synod issue in the end. On 26 November 1862, the Ludolf and Smuts versus Murray and Low lawsuit in the Cape determined that the constitution of the Synod of the Dutch Reformed Church, according to Ordinance 7 of 1843, only allows ministers of churches in the Cape Colony to take part in the Cape Synod. This obliged the NG Church to establish separate synods for Natal and the Free State, where they were quite established by this time. The NG Church parishes in Transvaal did also establish a general church meeting, like they did in the Transvaal. They held their first meeting on 3 December 1866 at Utrecht in the ZAR. This date is seen by the Hervormers as the official establishment of the NG Church in the Transvaal. They don't see it that way. The first church building of the Hervormde Kerk at Rustenberg was consecrated in 1851. This building was constructed using unbaked bricks and had a thatch roof. And by 1863, the church was in serious disrepair, and the church board decided to build a new church. The foundation stone for the new church was laid on 2 July 1864. The old church building finally collapsed at the beginning of 1865. The second church had a flat roof, like you can see, and leaked a lot. This was replaced by a gable roof in 1870. From the start, the church was also used as a school. From 1873, one of the wings of this church was permanently furnished to be used as a school. In 1860 and the 1870s, it was quite difficult years for the church and the state. Remember, the Hervormde Kerk was the only state church, so they were also paid by the government. The Doppers and the NGs had to pay their own reverends. But the Hervormde Kerk was paid by the government. That was actually a problem, because the government didn't have money. And the dominee, especially Dominee Smits in Rustenberg, a few times said, no pay, no pray. So they started issuing church money for the people to be able to pay the reverend. And this is one of the church money for the offering, and the dominee could use it to buy what he needed. Okay. During the 1870s, some NG Church dominees did start joining the Hervormde Kerk in the Transvaal, and one of the most influential of them was Reverend H.S. Bosman, which was a son of the Transvaal that went to the Cape to be trained as a reverend. So he came to the Transvaal back in 1876, before the annexation. The British annexation of the Transvaal territory in 1877 did not end well for the British. The Transvaal War of 1880 to 1881 resulted in the restoration of domestic self-rule for the Boers in Transvaal. For the Dutch Reformed members separated in free church bodies at this time, this was a time to again investigate the possibility of uniting the church. From the start, the Dopper Church was wisely stayed out of it. With good intentions, a union between the Hervormde Kerk and the NG Church in Transvaal was realized on 7 December 1865. For the Hervormde Kerk, it was a palaver. Unfortunately, negotiations did not result in an agreement on what the official name for the United Church should be. As stated previously, the two names, Hervormde Kerk or Gereformeerde Kerk, was a hotly debated issue since 1866. The negotiations for the two churches did not want to derail the process because of the name issue, and it was agreed to make a final decision on the name at a later stage when all the things had settled down a bit. On 9 April 1886, the Hervormde Kerk parish at Rustenberg started functioning as a United Church parish. The parish was granted permission to keep using the name Hervormde Kerk until a name for the United Church was decided on. Reverend Smits was not in good health by this time. After 25 years service in Rustenberg, he asked to go on early pension. That started on 10 April 1886, so he didn't go along with the union. Reverend Smits must also have had some misgivings of going along with the union, since in February 1886 he was part of a meeting of the Hervormde Kerk Consulents parish of Pretoria. This parish did not have a dominee to influence them, so it was only members and elders. And the church board and the members refused to go along with the union and opted to lawfully continue the Hervormde Kerk as a church fellowship in the Transvaal. In Rustenburg, Reverend J.C. Jefer from the Cape NG Church was confirmed as the new dominee on 9 October 1886. The official name of the United Church was decided on 16 May 1889. It was decided to name the church Nederduits Hervormde of Gereformeerde Kerk. This was not an easy decision. Even establishing the sequence of the two names was an issue. It was only by casting the lots that Hervormde was placed first. By the time, several members from the Hervormde Kerk were not happy in the new United Church. The Cape NG Church dominees were dominant in the United Church, and the character of the United Church as a result was rather a continuation of the NG Church and not the Hervormde Kerk which they wanted, because they were numerical in the most. Okay, so they thought, now we're going to absorb the NG Church. But in the end, the NG Church absorbed them. When the United Church finally decided on a name, a parish like Rustenburg, still using Hervormde Kerk, now had to change their name. With all the discontent among the ordinary Hervormde Kerk members about the theology and the differences between the two churches, remember the Hervormde Kerk was Dutch dominated, the NG Church was dominated by Scottish reverends from the Presbyterian Church. The union started unraveling. Several of them turned their back on the union, especially the members and the elders. None of the dominees, because most of them came from the Cape. But the members said, no, a synod can't decide for us to end our church. We as members, we decide if we're part of a new church or not. The Hervormde Kerk in the Netherlands again responded to the request of these people that started going out of the United Church back to the Hervormde Kerk that stayed in Pretoria at one parish. And the first to arrive was Reverend M.J. Godefroy in 1887. He was based in Pretoria, but for 4 years had to minister to all the shepherdless Hervormde Kerk members all over Transvaal. Helper arrived in 1890, and Reverend Jack van Belkom was confirmed as dominee for the Hervormde Kerk at Rustenburg on 6 June 1891. At first they used a canvas tent for the church. Discontent grew with the situation, since the NG Church did not have a church building at Rustenburg before the union, and now they think they lost their church unlawfully. But in the end, in 16 January 1892, the Hervormde Kerk members officially asked for the church building and parsonage to be returned to them. When the NH or GE church members refused, a court application was launched against them on 2 October 1893. The court, made up of Chief Justice J.G. Kotze and Judges Jorrison and Maurice, deliberated, and the verdict was delivered on 13 April 1895, ordering the NH or G Church to return all properties in Rustenburg to the Hervormde Kerk. It was then that Reverend Hefer and the remaining members of the NHRG Church, the United Church, had to build the new church, which still stands today as a monument to their perseverance in very, very difficult times for them, because it was bad. They lost everything. After South Africa became a republic, the NHRG Church did amalgamate with the other NG churches in the Cape. So the Hervormers were right, they were an NG church, and to form the NG Church in South Africa. The Doppers remained Doppers, and the Hervormers remained Hervormers to this day. The church history between the three churches remain a very complicated issue, and we can never agree on them. So if you have NG Germany telling you the story, it will sound totally different. They can't really decide when was the Hervormde Kerk started. Was it 1853 when Van der Hof came? Some of them say, no, that's then. No. Maybe it was 1857 when the ZAR decided the church's name is the Hervormde Kerk. It's actually the politicians that divided the church. No. It's actually in the 1860s when they didn't go under the synod. No, it's actually, and so it's a lot of, but that's the church that developed. The Hervormde Kerk was the state church of the Transvaal. Just to conclude, the Hervormde Kerk used the church building in the center of town up to the early 1950s, when it was eventually demolished, very, very sadly. On 2 April 1949, the cornerstone was laid for a new church building to commemorate the centenary of the parish in 1950. And this centenary church was eventually also demolished in the 2000s, and the parish built a new church near the old farm of Paul Kruger at Waterval in 2010. In my opinion, this was a very, very unfortunate move, since the center of Rustenberg, around which the city started as a dusty church town in 1850, is now lost forever under the hustle and bustle of an unsightly mall. It is only when looking from above something of the old history can still be seen in the patterns of the old city blocks. Thank you.